Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last NinjaOne live stream for 9.0 week. I'm Jonathan Crow, Director of Community. I have with me some very special guests who are here of their own volition, and we're really excited to be here, I must say.
Absolutely not voluntold.
We have, oh man, these guys don't really need any introduction for a lot of the folks on the call. You know them. You've been following them for years. A lot of you have been reading Gavin's blog for years, I'm sure. And certainly now you chat with him in the Discord all the time. But I'll introduce him anyway. So first of all, we have Gavin Stone. He's Director of Product Management here at NinjaOne. You have your hands in all sorts of things. Gavin, thanks so much for taking time on a Friday evening for you.
My pleasure.
This is what you like to do on your Friday evenings on TGIF. This is what you're wrapping up
That's
your
what
week.
Discord and streams are for, and I love nothing more.
Not only that, but we're celebrating Gavin's anniversary in Ninja today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can you believe 3 whole years? It seems like it's flown by and also like it's been a lifetime ago. How long does it feel for you, Gavin?
About 30 years. It's been a fun 3 years. We've had the opportunity to build some amazing things in that time. It's been hard work, but it's been worth it.
Well, Ninja has definitely benefited from those 3 years tenfold at least. Thank you so much for being here. And we also have Kite Archer. And Kite is a product manager here working with Gavin on all sorts of things, reporting what's called the main line here at NinjaOne. I mean, Ninja, in those 3 years that Gavin has been here, has expanded all sorts of different products, features, capabilities. And Kite and Gavin work on a team that's really involved with the RMM component, the mainline portion. And that's really bringing everything from their MSP background that they wanted to have in place. They knew Ninja needed, building really these capabilities that they wanted to have when they were acting as MSPs. And a lot of that revolves around automations and being able to scale the use of Ninja. And so we're going to be talking today about enhanced policy conditions and file transfer automations. Thank you both for being here. And before we dive in and get to sharing the screen and everything, first of all, everyone in the chat, you know the drill. Don't be shy. As these two are walking through things, leave your questions, comments, heckles, praise, all the things in the chat. We'll respond to them. And before we show these things, start going through the demos, Kite, is there anything that looking at amidst all the new features and capabilities, why focus on these things? Can you give us any kind of like background and maybe kind of zoom out a little bit about what some of these capabilities delivered in 9.0 are really meant to help people achieve? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think I can do a little bit of that anyway. So, compound conditions, big success. One of Gavin's flagship projects. So I'm not going to steal his thunder too much on that stuff, but obviously expanding the number of conditions available in that framework is going to be super useful to everyone. And we're going to talk a lot about the new stuff that's in there today, so I don't want to do too much in the way of spoilers, but we do have a new service condition that Gavin's going to be talking about, and the ways that is useful are kind of the target of this stream. So I'm going to leave that as like little future spoilers. And then as far as the file transfer automation, so we get people all the time who really want to be able to send a file to like all of their endpoints, but not necessarily like an installer, right? Like, hey, I want to set someone's desktop wallpaper, or I want to send an icon to everyone's desktop. And so this feature was really designed to handle that sort of request, where you might have even a collection of small files that you want to send, and we're going to give you the ability to just send that over.
Awesome. How about you, Gavin? Is there any thing that you'd like to preface everybody with before we dive into the demo?
So one of the unseen things that went out in 9, but there was not really any fanfare about it, was a lot of work to make the platform scalable, hundreds of thousands of devices plus more. And one of the things we do in our team, as Jonathan, you said, we call it the mainline team internally, is making sure that the app scales and structures out to do all of the things that it needs to do for our customers. And that involves a lot of work underneath, prepping the foundations to make sure that when we build features, they are done in a way that is secure and scalable. So scalability was a big focus of 9, but it doesn't have much fanfare because it is very much foundational work, but I thought it's worth mentioning.
100%. And I mean, that's also one of the reasons we've forgive me, everybody, you've heard me say this over and over again this week, but with these streams, I think it's just really cool that our product managers here put aside the time to do these things. And, we have our overview webinars. Jeff Hunter does an amazing job with those. But there's all these things for every major feature that gets a lot of fanfare. There's so much more that gets included in our major releases. And so this is a cool chance to give some more deep dives into things because we want to make sure that everyone is aware of everything that's available with Ninja. All right. So with that, Gavin, do you want to start us out?
Absolutely. Right. Let's jump into this. Let's share this out. We want to do.
And while you're doing that, safe mode, I see your question. Don't worry, we'll get to that when we move on to guide section.
Okay, so.
This is my dream, guys. I'm in Ninja. Look at this. You can see me right in.
I'm not sure who put in the chat. Look, I'm too busy looking at things behind you to see if there's anything embarrassing there. I did have a quick scan behind me, thinking, "Oh, is there anything?" all there is there's some Legos on there, and there's some Disney items as well on the shelf.
I know.
Unfortunately, nothing too embarrassing.
I do like this bonus game of I've got 2 things I want to ask at the very end. Bonus questions about items I've spotted on both of your bookshelves. So if you want to see if we have the same question, audience, then leave that in the chat.
I enjoy having my childhood items examined deeply by an audience on the internet. It seems like a great way to spend my evening. I tell you.
Kite loves coming on the streams. Can't wait for that.
That's what Friday evening's for. That is what a Friday evening is for.
All right, please, Gavin, save us. Take us away.
I will save us all. Let's talk about compound conditions, or specifically the Windows Service compound condition that was added in there. So let's start with some of the basics. Like what is a Windows Service condition? For those of you who are not familiar with Ninja or haven't delved into it too much, we have conditions at the moment in 2 different places. One is just this regular condition. And if we come into here and we go to select condition, we have Windows Service. And what that's doing is it's allowing you to check things like, is the service up, down, etc. One of the things that we've released in 9 is a compound condition Windows Service. So what does that mean? A compound condition in Ninja is the ability to stack up multiple conditions at once and use a little bit of logic to determine whether an alert should trigger. So you can see in here at the moment, we've got script result condition, custom fields, software, and recently added in 9 Windows Service. This allows you to build up more than one in here. So for example, just to show you what this looks like, I'm going to delve into this a bit more in depth in a second. You can see how you can say, well, I want all of these conditions to be true if this particular service exists. So you might be asking, is this in multiple OSs? We do have a daemon compound condition that's coming out in the next version of Ninja in version 10. Before I jump into some of the Windows Service things, I wanted to talk a little bit about how the compound conditions work, because one of the things that's not relatively well known is when you add things into here. So let me just add some examples. So we'll say if the CrowdStrike Windows sensor exists, and we'll say the all-join router service is up. And let's just add a random evaluation script onto the end of here. When these are evaluated in a compound condition, these are evaluated actually in the order that you have put them in here. So it runs this first, then it runs this next, and it runs this afterwards. The reason that that's important is because of this option here. When you choose all conditions are true, while Ninja is evaluating these compound conditions, if it finds that the first one is not true, it's not going to run the second or the third. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because you don't want to be evaluating everything in here if you're telling it that all of those conditions need to be true. If any of these are false, it stops just to save having to evaluate the rest of them. Whereas the other option is any condition is true. And that evaluates everything all of the time whenever this condition actually triggers. So let's delve into the Windows Service one a little bit more. Let's get rid of some of these, and I'm going to go back into the policy I actually need to be in here. Let's come back to the AD server, and we'll go into this policy. Here's one I made earlier, so to speak. Before I delve into this a bit more, Kai, anything you want to add about Windows services or the compound conditions?
Sure. So, one of the things that we get a lot of sort of questions about, or a lot of, I guess, like requests about like how to do, right? Because it's not as common as it used to be, right? Is monitoring things like Exchange or SQL or, a lot of these sort of services that are unique to like Windows servers that are less common, I guess, so like more enterprise focused. So this is a good way to do that, because you can essentially do a detection for all of the services, right? To figure out even if the thing is a SQL server, right? You can say like, does this service exist at all? And then if it does, like, then you can take your SQL specific actions. So it's a pretty good way to be able to target like specific roles or features in Windows that you may not have any other way of detecting.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And you can see here, actually, one of the first ones that I'm going to demonstrate is the add service condition. So the NTDS service, for those who don't know, is the Active Directory Domain Controller service. And essentially, when this is running, the machine is, for all intents and purposes, a domain controller. So if I'm adding this in from scratch, you can see that I can come to here. We have the actual raw service name. So for Active Directory, if I search for that, you'll see we've got the Active Directory Domain Services. So you can search by those display names. These services are pulled from the agents that you have in Ninja. So if you have any custom services, you should be able to find them in here just by searching. The other alternative is you can search by the raw service name. So for this one, it's NTDS. One of the other things that you can do is, let's say that you don't have the service that you need to target in this list. You can simply type in whatever you want in here, and that will look at the actual service name and determine that this is a manual entry. So you don't necessarily need to use one of the auto selects. This is a really interesting way of limiting things that run in a compound condition down to a certain thing. So in this example, anything that we add in after this is only ever going to trigger alerts if the machine is an Active Directory controller. So one of the things that I've heard a bit of confusion and concern about in the past is, well, maybe I want to run a script now to check something against that Active Directory domain controller. And I don't want that to run on all of my workstations. Even though this is doing this check here, I don't want the script result condition to win. And that's why the order here is important, because if the first step fails here, it's never going to run that script. So always consider that this is running top down. If it fails on the first set, it's not going to run, with the exception of if this is changed to any. And like Kite said, this is a really good way to scope things if you want to target specifically things like domain controllers, DHCP, SQL, DNS, or even line of business applications.
And I don't want to jump in with my section too early, but you can also use the file transfer automation as an action when a compound condition triggers. So you could even send files really to an endpoint if you want to.
Yeah. So you can also see that we've got some options here in the trigger when. So trigger when exists is when a service is actually present on the machine. It's not talking about its state, it's talking about its existence. Doesn't exist means the service is not on that machine. And That's self-explanatory. Up and down are also self-explanatory. But one of the changes that we've made in this version is actually a bit of a twist on what down and up really mean. So up is self-explanatory, but what does down mean? One of the things that those of you who've worked on Windows servers before will know that there's not just two states for Windows services. There is up, down, and then there's starting, there's stopping, there's other states. What we've done here is we've made anything that is down basically the reverse of up. So if the service is not started, it will trigger if you choose down, not necessarily that the service is stopped, which is important because you can get sometimes services that stick when they're stopping or stick when they're starting, or be in a special state that's not necessarily covered by it just being started. So just a neat little thing to add into there. Okay, let's look at how we can expand that into something a bit more practical. Let me come into so this is actually a real life example. So I'm just going to open up another window here. And we're going to go into automations, and I'm just going to quickly show you a script that was put together here. So this is an example of how you could utilize this in real life to be helpful. What this script is doing is it's running a thing called DC-diag, which runs on domain controllers and runs a series of tests and outputs whether there's an issue or not. In this particular case, I'm matching on a health test passing as opposed to failing because the domain controller running this on is in a healthy state. But this, you'd flip this around to just search for the failure string that occurs in DC-diag if you wanted to use it properly. And we have this stacked up against this compound condition. So what does this mean? It means that in the script result condition, we are going to run the one that we've just shown there only if the Windows service NTDS exists on that compound condition first. That means when this evaluates, it says I'm not active. I'm an Active Directory domain controller. I'll run this script result condition to check the DC-diag, and from there you can then trigger your alert, trigger your automations, or trigger whatever you want. So super specific targeting at a very unique combination of domain controller and just DC-diag. Let me show you something else. This was one of the things that I loved to run against domain controllers back when I was an MSP. If I can scroll and find what I'm after. Yeah, domain controller time drift. So what this script is doing is it's going out to pool.ntp.org, which is an NTP time server, and it's comparing the time on the atomic clock that is there against the time that is on this local domain controller. For the Windows admins among us who've had to deal with time issues in Active Directory, you know how important having the clock correct on the domain controllers and then on the domain workstations is really critical. And so in this particular script, we are looking if the drift is exceeded, and if it's exceeded over the 5 seconds which is set for the maximum drift in this script, it will output drift exceeded. And unsurprisingly, we can utilize that in a compound condition, again, targeting the NTDS, and then running the script result condition. If it has the drift exceeded, we'll include the script output in the final alert, and it will then tell us exactly what's happening when you generate the alert or notification.
And for those of you who may have, for those of you who may have forgotten to set the time sync on your hypervisor, this could be pretty valuable.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I know we're utilizing domain controller as the example here, but realistically, this is any combination of things that you want based on the existence or even the state of a Windows service. When you start to add all of these up and add them together, you can come up with some pretty complex monitoring scenarios. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about some things that were coming in 10. Thank you, everyone, for jumping onto this. This was primarily about 9, but because we're talking about compound conditions, I figured I'd give you a sneak peek at what we have coming in 10 for compound conditions. So we have an operating system condition coming in 10. That'll allow you to do some more specific targeting. Maybe you want to target just Windows 7. Maybe you want to target just Windows. And this supports equal to, not equal to, and some other good operators. And this has a wildcard in it as well. So you can do things like Windows star and just pick up on, just target everything that's Windows as an example. And you can see again in this kind of targeting and building up these complex conditions allows you to be even more specific about what you're hitting. One of the other points to make, which I'd forgotten about, but I'm going to make it now. These compound conditions are very, very low footprint. They're not running scripts. They're actually workloads embedded into our agent with Ninja code. So stacking these up, they're actually really low footprint when they run on the agents. The script result condition is obviously running a script that you choose, but the rest are pretty low footprint when they run on the machines. So we had the operating system condition. We also have a process condition, which really opens up some interesting doors for detection. Maybe you've got a line of business application that you want to monitor. Maybe you're looking to monitor multiple processes at once. Another good way of targeting specifically certain types of machines. That's really exciting. Can't wait for that to go in. Windows role or feature. So instead of relying on just the service in 10, you could quite literally look for the existence of a role or a feature being included in Windows. We've scoured every version of Windows that we can and included every combination of feature and role in here ready for you. You can add your own by just typing it in, but we've, I think, got everything in there. That's really good for really specific targeting of any kind of role or feature that you want in Windows. And the third one showcases two things, actually. It showcases the next iteration of what Windows Service is going to look like, because we're going to have embedded any or all services, down, up, exists, or don't exist, along with a duration in the next version of the Windows service. One of the ways that we like to build these things in Ninja is not put the kitchen sink in first, but put something at the core, excuse me, put something in the core that's very solid, that we test and push out when our clients can have use for it. And you're seeing the second iteration in daemon condition that's going to get ported back to Windows Service as well. But our daemon condition is also coming in 10.
So that's pretty cool. Yes. But you didn't really explain what duration does. Might be helpful.
Oh no, that's a really good point. So duration is basically saying I want this state to have existed for a certain period of time before I actually trigger. So avoiding situations where, say, a daemon or a service stops for maybe it flaps, it goes down and then comes back up again. This says, you can say here, well, actually, I want this to have been down for 5 minutes before I get alerted, which allows you to temper those situations. Anything you want to add, Kite, from what I've put forward there?
No, I love being here. This is great. No, kidding. Sorry. No, yeah. I mean, I think you've done a pretty good job of covering all the stuff that I could think of for this. But yeah, no, some of the stuff in 10 is really, really exciting. And obviously we talked about a little bit earlier, being able to use like the service condition to detect a role, and then being able to actually just detect the role itself, right, is going to be the next evolution of that for Windows. And super cool stuff, super exciting. I think it's going to give a lot of flexibility to folks out there who have really been chomping at the bit to do a little bit more customized monitoring, a little bit more specialized stuff. It'll really reduce the number of policies that you need to have, right? So like not needing to have as many inherited policies for individual devices. It should just make administration a lot cleaner.
I agree. Let me jump onto the second new thing, which is a pre-script result condition. Let's jump into automation here. So if I add a new installation here.
Yeah, by the way, surprise, Jonathan. We're doing something that's not even on the script. You can you take off. We're good.
Yeah, we're going rogue, Jonathan.
Yeah. This is our stream now. Jonathan doesn't get to tell us what to do.
This is what happens when you have streams on a Friday. The Friday afternoon kicks in.
Yeah.
So this is in our install application. We've added a pretty small setting, but pretty big potential. If you set up an application in here, you'll see that there's a new option here. It's grayed out here because I've not got any prescripts selected. Cancel the software install if the automation returns a failure code. Like, what does that mean? What can we use it for? Let's look at an actual practical example. I have a VLC installation that I added into the system before. So this is just a standard app that I've added in. It just has a special no worky icon, as I call it. If I come across the additional settings, you'll see that I have a dependency check VLC setup. That's just a script that I've wrote just as a placeholder. It actually checks if a text file exists on the local machine and then stops if it doesn't. You could utilize any kind of automation script here in Ninja to do any kind of dependency check, or even potentially other things like deliver a file, like an individual file. Yes, you can do helper files in the install application already, but you can run any script or file transfer before this pre-script. I'm not going to save this because I don't want to do that. Let's just come back in here. So on the additional settings here, you see this tick box that says cancel the software installation if the automation returns a failure code. What does that mean? I've seen a number of people not have an understanding of what is meant by failure code or error code. Let me come in and find my dependency check here. So you can see here that we're declaring a file path. We're actually testing that path. And if that path does not exist, we are saying that the dependency check has failed, exit 1. And this is the return code or the failure code. Generally, programs that have been successful or scripts that have been successful all exit with a return code. And that's normally 0. 0 is the standard return code that happens when you close applications, run scripts, etc. You can have any code here. It doesn't have to be 1. It's anything that is not 0.
It does have to be a number, though.
It does have to be a number, yeah. But as long as it's not 0, it's exiting essentially with an error. And the tick box that we were just looking at will pick up on that. It will say, I can see that prescript that you're running doesn't have a return code of 0. So I'm going to stop the software installation full stop. And that's really handy for being able to run dependency checks. Maybe you want to check for the existence of another piece of software before you install this particular piece of software. Anything else you can think of there, Kite, in terms of possibilities there?
I mean, no, this one's pretty straightforward, but really, like you said, pretty useful. A great example of something to do with this would be that you could, for example, have a pre-installation script that checks to see if the thing you're installing is already installed, right? Mm-hmm. And then if it's already installed, be like, well, all right, we're good. We don't want to install it. And so that would be kind of the most common use case, I think. And then that way you're not running, pointless executions of things. Like when you're onboarding devices, sometimes maybe you need to run things a few times against a group of devices. So this would be a way that you could just push this out manually, right, to like a whole fleet of devices or a whole organization and say like, yeah, install this if it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, it's just going to bail, and that's completely fine. And if it already exists, then, or if it doesn't already exist, I should say, it'll continue normally and do the install.
Excellent. So what I think we do, Kite, here is if we jump over to your section, and then we'll spend some time at the end running through the questions that people have. I'll stop sharing here, and I'll pass you over to my esteemed colleague, Kite Archer. He won't tell you this, but the file transfer automation was his baby. The work that he's done here to get this into the product has been really good. So thank you for that, Kite, and please take the floor.
Sure. So some other, I was going to, well, what's up, Jonathan? Hi.
Sorry, I know I'm buttoned in here. So you deserve the praise and the blame for this feature, so everyone knows who to come after. No, what I jumped in to say is before we jump into file transfer automation, which you already have a lot of questions. People are definitely excited about this, Kite, and they've been already in the comments. Folks are saying that this is something they're really looking forward to trying out. But a couple of questions, Gavin, if you don't mind, instead of waiting to the end, just a couple while it's a little bit more fresh. There's around conditions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was one there that very specifically I wanted to tackle, if that's okay, Jonathan. And then
yeah, please.
I saw Safe Mode asked a question that was how often are compound conditions checking or evaluating the conditions, and would you potentially miss out on the daemon conditions if it's not down long enough for the checks to run? So that's configurable inside of the compound condition. You can tell it how often you want to run. I think the shortest period of time is 3 minutes. Is that right, Kev? I want to say.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yeah. So I guess in theory, if you were to set the value super low, it's possible that you wouldn't miss it necessarily, but the next time it runs, it would be exceeding that threshold. I'll leave the rest to any. It's the only one I saw, so I'll leave the rest to you, Jonathan. You've got another list.
No, that's great. That's exactly one that I wanted to call out. So thanks for doing that. And then there was a couple other about again related to conditions, although a little bit differently, right? So this is a question from Chase, more about the cloud monitor conditions. So we're veering over into something a little bit different here, but is this something that you feel comfortable addressing too, Gavin, or?
Okay, so how do the cloud condition monitors work? I had two conditions, one for a keyword check, one for SSL Explorer, and both are either required to trigger. So I'll answer this in two different ways. We don't currently have cloud monitors inside of compound conditions. So the way that this works in Ninja is these work independently. Your SSL expiry would operate completely independently to the keyword check. I kind of like the idea of having these built into a compound condition, though. It's an interesting thought, but they operate independently. So they are. It's a either is required to trigger.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. And yeah, sorry for racing one that wasn't quite on the nose there. The last one is just not a question, more of just a little suggestion. I just wanted to bring this up before we got too far away from your walkthrough there. So this was back when it was going over the up-down options. Just a little suggestion there.
So like a tooltip that explains what down means?
Yeah,
I like that idea. Actually, interestingly, we are... let me just quickly take over the screen share again.
It's fair. I'll give this one to you. We were going to let me do this, but I think it's appropriate for this question. So
let me jump back into here. We're being pretty intentional about putting better tooltips in across the app. So you'll see actually in two places. In 10, we have included information on whether an automation, when it's running, either in a scheduled automation or a task, whether it will run or what the behavior will be if it is run. So this is one of the small things that we added into 9. So for example, if you hover over the eye here, you'll see that it says, if the device is offline, it will run when the device comes online. I constantly was forgetting how some of these run. So I'm definitely all for getting more informational tooltips into the app. And as you can see with our 9 release, that's one of the areas that we've done that. So thank you for the suggestion. We'll definitely add that in. And I hope you enjoyed the little eyes in the scheduled tasks and the scheduled automations.
Okay, awesome. So then without further ado, thanks for letting me butt in there. But
sure.
Kite, feel free to take it away.
Absolutely. So as Jonathan mentioned, this is sort of my I pushed for this. Also, things you could blame me for would be every instance of Ninja being down, I think, in the last 6 months. Anytime that the app doesn't load correctly, I think that's my fault. If you can't log in, definitely me. So now that we've got that out of the way.
What about if it's raining? Can I blame you if it's raining?
No, that's actually your fault. You're in England.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I'll take that. I'll take it.
Yeah, I can't actually help you with that. So, but yeah, let's talk a little bit about file transfer automations and sort of what you can do with them, and show stuff off. My stuff is often a little less flashy, and I'm not British, so my accent's way less cool. But you know, it's all good. I'm just looking for my window here.
I think your voice is definitely like audiobook quality here, Kite. I think it's quite soothing.
I actually found there was a setting for Restream that allowed me to use high quality audio, and I have my podcast mic, so I thought it would be pretty cool to do this. So this might be a little bright, and I apologize. I have a monitor that has auto HDR, but this is Ninja. You've seen this. You love this. This is what we do, right? So if you come into the administration under library, under automation, here you can now add a file transfer as a type. And so this file transfer automation, it has room for a name, like this, and it allows you to use Windows, Mac, Linux. So like any OS at all that we support for the most part, right? You can select whatever you like. And you can select a destination folder. You can see here we did add a tooltip that says destination folders support paths with environment variables. So like here you can actually use things like user profiles or your system root. Any of those sort of system variables that you might want to use that you've got set. You can make use of them here for your destination folder. We also have the option to use a URL or allow you to upload a small file of 200 megs or less to our server. So let's talk a little bit about, wow, what is it doing? That's crazy. Well, let's talk a little bit about why 200 megs. So I did a whole bunch of research into what people were trying to do with a feature like this. And while there were certainly some people who, super bright mode in front of dark mode. That's correct, yeah. So my text is very tiny. Oh no. I could probably fix that. Give me 1 second. It's funny. I was complaining at someone else for this earlier. Is that better? We doing better now? That's probably better.
That looks good.
All right. So anyways, so in here, we have a maximum file size of 200 megabytes. And so I did a bunch of research into like why people wanted to send files and what they were looking to do with it. And I settled on 200 megabytes for two reasons, right? One, it's large enough that if you wanted to like make a self-compressed archive and send that over, right, you could get a decent number of files in there. You could get like a VPN config or a bunch of icons or like an XML file, or even like a small application that doesn't need to install something like sysmon. Things like that. So I wanted to make sure that those all worked. But then, we also didn't want to have it be like, well, here's a 9 gig ISO that's going to take like 300 years to send over, right? Like there are more efficient methods of transferring super large files like that. So that's why we chose the 200 megabyte limit for our storage. On the URL, there is no limit. So, if you want to send that 9 gigabyte, ISO file over and like pre-stage a copy of Windows 11 to all your Windows 10 devices, like you can totally do that. You just have to host it somewhere that is, external to Ninja. So we also offer all the same categories down here that you would have for like a regular script. So if you want to, restrict permissions or anything to file transfer, that all works. I have a couple of things that I've set up ahead of time. And so I'm going to show a couple of them in the app here, which is the boring way of showing you things. And then I'm going to show you some of them in action, which is like way more fun. So just to give you an idea, I do have this. This is our icon. It's a little arrow with like a thing. So it's got a unique icon for file transfers. You'll recognize them immediately. So in here, I'm going to edit this. This is essentially just the newest version of Ubuntu. And so this would drop it in the folder C:\Ubuntu. This is like the most basic of file transfers, right? Like it's going to reach out to like your agent is going to reach out to the web. It's going to download this ISO and it's going to put it where you tell it to put it. If that folder doesn't exist, it's going to make it. And you can see here, It does also specify that in the tooltip. It says if the folder doesn't exist, it will be created. So this is like super basic. I'm not going to show this off. Everybody knows you can transfer a file from the web. Like we do this every day in our web browsers, right? No big deal. So let's talk about something a little more interesting. How many of you know that if you go into branding, there's a systray option that you can edit and you can add automations to? People know this? I hope people know this because it's one of my favorite features. So I've set this up. This is a systray icon that transfers over a file that I've created called custom BG info, and then runs a script called show and hide device information for technician. And I have a label here that I've on the systray that says show device information on desktop. So I also have one for hide. And actually, before I close out of this, this is done with a script that has a little drop down. So all I had to do here was basically select to run the script and then select show or hide. Code for this is also available, very basic. I guess I'll flash it real quick on the screen, but like, you know, it's just code. No one cares. But very simple. Just like, hey, if the environment, you know, the show or hide variable is set to show, run this thing with these settings, and if it's not, run it with these settings. Very, very simple, straightforward. It's also dark, which I guess is probably a good break for your eyes. I apologize for the super light. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and then I'm going to share a slightly different screen. So I have prepped here. Oops. Oh, God. What is going on with my screen? There we are. I have prepped here a Ninja remote screen. You all like Ninja remote, right?
I love it.
All right. So hopefully, here we are. We have a Ninja remote screen. So here, this is just a device. And as I mentioned, we have our systray. And you can see here I have show device information on desktop. I'm going to show a couple things first, which is, so this particular automation is set to send to %system drive /bg info. And I'm sending a zip file. And I know there was a question earlier about uncompressing a zip file. So spoilers, there's just a checkbox in the app that says like, hey, do you want to uncompress this zip file? And if you say yes, it just does it. And I'll show that in the app after we're done here. But I'm going to click this show stuff. You can see now there's a BG info folder. So it's transferred over my file. Now it's uncompressing it with a zip file. Once it's uncompressed, it's going to run that follow-up script. The whole thing here is probably going to take about 10 to 12 seconds. There we go. And this is a custom .bgi file that I created and exported so that it would show specifically this set of information. So that was all done with our systray automations and a file transfer automation. So just literally putting a file transfer automation in and then running the script afterwards to trigger the creating the settings. So I also set up one to hide that information. So this hide information one, you'll notice is going to take also about 10 seconds to run, which I think is super fast. But the reason it's going to take 10 seconds to run is because it's actually going out to the server, getting the checksum of the file, and checking to make sure that it hasn't changed. So because BG info is a permanent change, right? Like it changes your wallpaper. I wanted to be able to reset it. So this is essentially a setting that uses BG info to just use a space, so it goes away. But I also want to show off. Sorry, go ahead.
An important point about the hash as well is if you run the automation again. What happens if you run the automation again and the files are already there? Can you run through that process just quick?
Yeah, sure. I don't know why this thing's opening Edge, but that's just Windows, I guess. So if I run it again, right? So let's take a look here, right? I've got BG info, and you can see the timestamp is 1244, and these files in here are 1245. So if I run this show device information again, It will be done momentarily. You'll see that none of these these modified dates have changed. But it did re-extract the zip file for us. So that's an interesting piece, I guess, is that it checks to make sure that the checksum of the zip file hasn't changed. If it hasn't, it doesn't send that data over the network. It just went ahead and re-uncompressed that zip file because that option was set. So if you don't want to do that, right, it's important that you would pre-stage that file in some way, right? You could use a condition, a compound condition. You could use a scheduled task, whatever you want to pre-stage that file. And it's okay that it runs on a regular basis, because even if it's going to run, right, it's going to check to make sure that the file hash hasn't changed before it uses any network data. So it's perfectly acceptable to say, like, hey, I want to run this every hour, transfer this file. And it's not going to make it so that it actually goes and transfers the file every hour. It's going to check to say, hey, has this file changed? And if you upload a new version, it will change, right? So it'll do the update. Like, let's say a new version of BG Info came out and you wanted to update it, you just change it, and then all your stuff that's using the automation updates automatically, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this again. And then I want to show you guys real quick, even though this isn't necessarily part of the file transfer, I want to show you how fast this runs if you don't do the file transfer first. So if you're just running the script from our systray, because I really think our systray is super underutilized and I want to show it off here. So this is my show BG info pre-staged automation. And so this is only running the script that assumes that all these files are here. And so this is sort of an emulation of what would happen if you pre-stage the files and then we're going to just use them on the device. So if I click this, it's like a second and a half, right? So this is Ninja reaching out to the server saying, hey, I want to run a script, and then Ninja running the script. I personally think that the speed that our systray is capable of like running stuff is really just a unique advantage of Ninja. And not enough people take advantage of the fact that the systray can run automations and do automation chains even. So there's a lot of power there for like self-service and getting people to kind of be able to do things on their own. So a couple other things that I want to show off, although I'm going to need to, I'll leave this screen shared here because I think it'll be a little bit more fun to just sort of see what's happening rather than me running these automations against the device. There are a couple other things I could think of that you might want to do. And so one of the things I was thinking was like, you probably want to be able to put files on the public desktop, right? Like that seems like a pretty common use case for that seems like a pretty common use case for being able to send files. So I created this file transfer automation that I call Spread the Magic, because I think it's kind of a neat magic trick. And so I'm running it right now, and there it showed up. And so you can see I've now spread the magic. And so that just exists on the public desktop here. Right, so this is just in here, and whatever. So if you wanted to do icons or zip files or any of that stuff, you can distribute stuff that way. This stuff here in the systray is all running as the user, so like you wouldn't have admin access there. I think that might be everything that I have to show off. Can you use the systray to run an app as admin while on a user account? Kind of like an admin on demand for a specific app. Yes, you can. Absolutely. And so that is one of the great things you can do.
Because the systray, when the user launches something from the systray, it's not actually running it directly from the machine. It's going back to Ninja, and then Ninja is going back to the agent to execute it. It runs in exactly the same way as if you were running an automation from Ninja. That way, we can take it through the layers of security that it needs to go through to make sure that it's in the systray and is something that the user can be running. That can be run as a logged on user or any other third domain or local credentials or whatever you've got in there. Just the same as a normal automation.
Yep. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I have one other sort of fun improvement to show off that's not this after we're done. So if anyone had questions about this, I was just going to ask and see. Now would be a great time to have some questions here, and I have a real quick sort of fun thing to show off that's also new in 9.
Awesome. Okay. Loads of questions, which is great. We even had some apologies for questions from Kevin. Kevin, don't apologize for asking questions. That's what this is for.
Right, but do
you should
apologize for being named Kevin.
What's wrong with people named Kevin?
Yeah, why are you going to be such a Kevin?
A great name.
That's all.
Kevin, we love you and appreciate you on this Friday. Okay, so Kevin asked, can we automate uploading to file transfer?
So at this time, no. We don't have like an API for creating file transfers. You do have to go through the web app to do that. Sorry.
How about this one? Script triggering the file transfer script?
So you can't trigger a file automation inside of a script. However, you can do what I did, or do kind of like in most of the places where you could execute a script in Ninja, you can execute a sequence of automations. So you could theoretically, like in a scheduled task, for example, you could have a script run and then do a file transfer and then do another script, or you can do a compound condition, right, to say, check this thing, and then as a result, transfer this file and then run some other script. So there are ways that you can do that, but not inside of a script. Like there's no, please go call this file transfer automation as like a commandlet in a script, for example.
One more from Kevin. Unless there's more, Kevin, and let's go. I'm curious. I'm curious if we can have the user place a file in, let's say, C/transfer.
I mean, so you can output to C:transfer, but I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, what you're asking really is like, could you upload to Ninja from an endpoint by doing that? And the answer is no. This is a one-way street right now. So this is a way for you to send files to users, not to harvest them. We obviously have the file browser where you can download files individually. We don't have a mechanism currently where you can like get files off of machines in bulk. If that's something you're interested in, certainly would be a pretty interesting feature request.
Here you go. Here's some flowers for you, Kite.
Nice. I love that. It's like I got one good thing along with all of the downtime and the other stuff we talked about. So that's pretty good.
One of the other questions that came in, another Kevin question, I think is a good question though. He asked, how is it stored? Is it read only? Yes. And what are the files that you transfer in there actually inherit permissions from wherever you put it from its parent. So it all depends on what you have set on the parent. It'll follow standard NTFS permission inheritance.
Yep. And then if you're
the same in Unix and Mac.
Yeah, if you're talking about how to like restore it when you upload it, it's done through essentially like a secure link in the cloud, which is, I think, about as far deep into it as I'd want to go for a webinar.
Sure. And yeah, and related, it's a source location for the file. So our responsibility, or is Ninja now giving us a file repository?
So up to 200 megs, you can upload a file. It's not so much a file repository as like you can add files to an automation up to 200 megabytes, and then those files are stored securely on our cloud, and then they get sent from there. But if you're using like a URL, like for example the Ubuntu ISO or whatever, then that becomes your responsibility.
One more I see from Spencer. Hey Spencer, how many folders deep? This is going back to your point about the using the sys tray, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know that there is a limit. I can tell you that I've personally tested 8. So like 8 subfolders deep, it will create automatically to store a file. So like if I wanted to store a file in, C:\1 2 or 1/2/3/4/5/6/7/8, that works. I was told that there's no limit, so I'm just going to assume that's correct, but I didn't test past 8.
Well, you heard the challenge, folks. let us know.
Sure. I mean, yeah, break it. If you break it, we'll fix it. It's
okay, and then Kite, you mentioned kind of that 200 megabyte number at the top of the stream. You kind of mentioned how you arrived at that, but Mike was just kind of asking about that.
Well, so we envision this being used a little bit differently, Michael. So the 1 gig limit for automations is there because we want to facilitate as many like installers as possible. But really the use case is a lot different here, right? Like we envision a world where somebody, for example, takes a PowerShell module that they're going to use on all of their devices, and they might update it several times a day, right? Versus an installer, which is really going to run kind of the once and then it's installed, right? Or not as frequently. So part of it is just that we didn't want people to be having bandwidth concerns on like their endpoints. Another is just like the nature of the things tends to be that like if you're looking to push something that's larger than 200 megs, it's an installer, and we kind of already have a way to do that. So that was a big part of it. We also are doing some just mechanically some different things on the back end that facilitate this feature versus the installer automation stuff, which is probably beyond the scope of the stream. But there are some differences there as well.
What I'd love to hear is if anyone has use cases for having a file larger than 200 meg there, I'd love to hear what it is. Because when we did research on this initially, we found that a lot of the time people were looking to transfer, like Kite just gave some examples there, things like configuration files or a license file, and they don't tend to be that big. So I'd love to hear from people if they want more than 200 meg in that area. What are you looking to do? Because I would prefer to put something into Ninja that helps you do that organically and natively within Ninja, and you don't have to upload those yourself. So if you have things there, I'd love to hear what they are.
I do like that your motivation was greed. I do think that's great. That's perfect, Michael.
This is, yeah. My son and daughter play this game a lot. Why not more?
When I was growing up, my mom gave me the best life lessons that I've ever learned, which was you never get what you don't ask for, but you don't always get what you do.
Don't hit the shots you don't take.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming up on time here, so just want to rapid fire through some questions, and then you have your other thing that you want to share.
Sure.
What types, if any, won't be compatible?
We'll send anything you want to send.
Nice. Okay. And Kevin, I'm glad that we didn't bully you out of asking more questions.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so sort of related to that, from safe mode, way back at the beginning here, any plans for an option to auto-extract a zip file that's sent, rather than having a script afterwards to extract?
Yeah, so let me stop. I forgot I was sharing a window here, but let me share my Ninja window again. So this is built into the feature.
Sweet.
Like already there.
The best types of questions.
For sure. I think this is the window. Looks good. Okay. So this was my spread the magic automation, but you can see, no, I don't want to. Sorry. Let's go into the automation library. Just look at that. Actually, you know what? Let's do. We'll actually take a look at my my VG info. So in here you can see a couple of things that I talked about, right? So I'm using a variable. I'm using system drive, right? So that way, even if I was transferring to someone who had done something crazy, this is going to work. I have my file that I've uploaded, and you can see there's just a checkbox here that says expand zip after transfer. And this is going to expand the zip into the folder you specify. So this script ended up being c:\bginfo/bginfo, because I didn't just dump it to the root. but it expanded out everything that was there. If there's a file structure in the zip file, so like, there are subfolders, in this case there was not, but it will retain that file structure. So you can unzip basically anything, and it will, up to the 200 meg zip file essentially, and it will go no problem. And just while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and take an opportunity to talk about the thing that I was talking about earlier, which might not even be here. Great. So we have made a small change for those of you who have complained about this in the past. And let me tell you, there's a decent number of you. To our disk free space activity. So for those of you who may not remember, once upon a time, this didn't look this way. So you can see here we have a bunch of threshold operators, and we have this %. And it used to be that these were 2 drop downs that said kilo, mega, giga, and tera. And then I think it was like byte and something else. Like it was a very strange. I don't even remember how it was originally arranged. Gavin, do you? Because it was a very strange way of doing it.
My mind has burned that away and gone to the new format.
For sure. So we do on kilobytes limit you to 1023 because we figure at that point you're at 1 megabyte. We also limit you to 1023 megabytes and 1023 gigabytes. Once you get to terabytes, it's 512. So, but essentially you set a threshold, sort of the normal way you would expect. And you can also set percentage-based thresholds. We have this duration. So again, this is how long this has been triggered. And so if this threshold has been exceeded for more than, in this case, 30 minutes, right, then we're going to alert. We also have the system uptime delay, which we've always had, which is essentially like wait until the machine has been up for some number of minutes before triggering. We also now have, and I don't remember when this came in, the boot volume only. So you can turn this on to say we only want this condition to apply to like the C drive if it's a Windows machine, or like the root volume if it's a Linux machine, which I'm not showing you right now. I'm showing you a Windows condition. And then down here we have the ability to include or exclude volume labels. So we're giving you a lot more flexibility to create conditions around what you're looking to monitor specifically, right? So if you just want to monitor boot volumes, or you just want to monitor data volumes, or whatever, like these conditions are all going to be a lot easier to construct with all these new options that we've given. So I just wanted to make sure to draw some attention to that. I know it got a little bit of love in our release notes, but I personally am a big fan of this feature, so I thought it would be a good way to close the stream out. And just show that off.
I love it. Thanks, Kite. And Big Dog Tom, welcome late to the party. Did we actually handle this question? I'm not sure we did.
We did not, actually. This is a good question.
Yeah.
So if the file has the same hash as what's already there, so it's already, we compare the file hashes to say like, hey, is this changed? If it is changed, it will overwrite it. So it will overwrite it with a version that you have. If it's not changed, then it just won't send it over again.
And from Chris, hey Chris, combining these discussions, does file transfer make sure there's enough space for the item before trying to drop it?
No. It's a great idea, and I probably should have thought of that, but nope, it sure doesn't. It will just drop what you have. One of the benefits, I guess, of it, having a limit of 200 megs is most volumes do have, 200 megs free typically. I guess not always.
All right. You both have been super generous with your times on Friday evening. I can tell Gav is ready for a post. Well, and now he's ready to go back into Discord.
I was going to say, what I imagine Gavin is getting ready to do is have a cup of tea and go back to work. Knowing Gavin.
I'm actually going to get a lamb curry. That's my next.
Sounds nice.
That's my next job.
Sounds good to me. Thank you everybody for joining in. This was great. Tons of questions. Obviously, much anticipated features, capabilities. Thanks so much, Kite and Gavin, for joining, taking time to do it. And thank you everybody for joining in. That's it for 9.0 week. I mean, we'll be back in a blink of an eye for 10.0 week, if not sooner. But in the meantime, you all know where to find us. Come back to this YouTube recording if you have any specific questions to what was covered here. We'll respond. Join our Discord, which Robin pulled up for a second. Definitely hop in there. A lot of familiar faces. I know you're already members. We'll continue the conversations. But in the meantime, let's all wrap things up and have a good weekend. Thanks.
And I will say, if anyone wants to come over to our Discord, I'll be hanging out there for a few minutes after the stream just to answer any follow-up questions or anything that comes up. Yeah, so I'll probably be there for at least a half an hour, let's say.
That's awesome.
Monitoring chat.
That's awesome. Really appreciate that. All right, everybody. Thanks. I'm going to end this one and have a great weekend.